Well, there's absolutely no doubt on a macro thematic at the moment. The key debate being had on the trading floors at the moment is around inflation and more specifically inflation expectations. If you have a look at inflation expectations in America, they've dropped down to the lowest since October, down another couple of basis points on Fridays if we look at five-year swaps. In Europe, they're also trading at the lowest levels since October, down about 1.53%. Australia, we've seen falling inflation expectations as well. Now, if you extract that, what means relative to nominal bond yields, we've seen real yields moving up in Australia, both on the 5 and 10-year bond to the highest levels in a month or so, and that's really helped out the Australian dollar, which is pushing into 77 cents. You know, that's going to be the key level that we're watching this week. If we can see the Aussie dollar maintain that momentum and push into 77 cents, that's been the absolute Mac Daddy of a sell zone since really the early quarters of 2016. 77 to 77 and a half has really been where the market, the speculators, have been very, very happy to flood the Aussie dollar with offers, and that's what we're seeing as well. If we can see an extension up into 77.15, which is the downtrend since 2016, I think the market will look to sell into that level, and that's really the focus for me this week of whether we continue to see that. But this idea of falling inflation expectations is really key. It's been driving a flattening of the yield curve. Long-term rates have been moving lower, and you can't have this dynamic of falling inflation expectations but the Bank of Canada raising to a more hawkish tilt, the Federal Reserve expecting 3 rate hikes next year in 2019, whilst concurrently moving their balance sheet to a more normalised structure, whilst we're seeing that falling yield curve. It just doesn't compute. We do not see that situation playing through, and the market pricing is set accordingly at the moment. So that's the key thematic debate. As we go into this week, we're not going to learn a huge amount more. There's not a lot of data to really drive. I think the UK is going to be interesting. We've got the Queen's speech coming up on Wednesday, no set time for that. But will we see the DUP party in Ireland voting to form a government with the Conservatives? If that happens, obviously we'll have a minority government in play. There's no certainty that that's going to happen. There may actually be a failed negotiation there, and we may actually see new elections coming through in a few weeks' time. We know that UK is formally getting into that negotiation today. So we've got this Brexit negotiation which has started, which is going to be an absolute mess. No one really knows how this is going to go, and no one really knows if Theresa May is going to be leading this party going forward. There's been a lot of anger at her and the handling of what we've been seeing in London with the fires, and of course there's been a lot of speculation that she may step down. Will Boris Johnson step up? David Davis, someone like Philip Hammond. So that's going to be an interesting one. We'll be watching sterling this week as well. In terms of our opening call for the ASX 200, well, certainly we're looking for a flat open. SPI futures closed on Friday up 9 points. It's interesting, if you have a look at the markets that worked really well last week, it was REITs did well, up 4% as a subsector. Healthcare did well. You've got consumer discretionary very much in focus with Amazon's purchases over the weekend, and then you've got on the downside, materials and energy. Certainly energy under sizable pressure last week, but what we're seeing on the S&P on Friday was the energy sector working really well, so the market's going to be caught a little bit wrong-footed. Now, in terms of today's catalyst, we've got new motor vehicle sales coming at the same time as China property prices at 11:30. Not expecting either of those two to be a major driver of markets. We do have Philip Lowe, the RBA governor, speaking at 9:30. So, whether we get any comments there about this inflation story, I think is going to be widely watched. But a pretty flat, benign day to be watching. We will be watching, the Australian dollar this week, and whether or not we can push up into that 77 cents. I think that's a key trade for traders to look at.